Hello, good evening, and welcome to the TNT Show, The Nation Talks. As I said in previous shows, we are now on this well into the second century of our shows with Pastor Centennial and John Drummond, and I'm your host for the next 60 minutes. And again, as I say most weeks, thanks to you, the TNT Show and Indie Live are growing and delivering more exciting shows than ever before. By the way, you can watch this show on indielive.net, streamed out to YouTube, Facebook, Twitter. Plus, if you go to YouTube, you can see all the previous shows. You can look through, if it's your wish, over 100 shows. And many of them, frankly, in the immortal ones, are crackers. They're really, people you would expect to see on the mainstream media, but never get to appear there because they said something which the BBC got terribly upset about. And it may have been something very trivial, but that got them, as it were, off air for a considerable length of time. But they're on air with us. Well, you know, it's been another great day for British democracy. In a Mumsnet interview today, Boris Johnson was asked, "Why should anyone listen to you, as we all know you are a habitual liar?" The Prime Minister's answer was, ah. Well, you can put all that behind you, all that articulation. Tonight, we're talking to two very special guests. We'll be discussing Yes Highland with Carole Inglis and Alison Fraser. Now, they have taken on the formidable task of working with Yes supporters across an area larger than Belgium. Carole and Alison are here for a full hour, and they're taking your questions live. So there's still time to get your question considered. You'll find all the details on the screen. As I said earlier, TNT stands for The Nation Talk. So in many respects, this is your show. We're live and we're free. So unlike the BBC, no license, no problem. We're here for a full hour, and we'd love to hear from you. Now to our guests tonight, The Nation Talks, to Carole and Alison. Thanks so much for joining us. How are you? Starting with Alison, please.
Hi, I'm fine. I belong to Indra Yes, the group that really started all this Highlands and Islands business way back just after the referendum. We've got a lovely day here today. I don't know how everybody else is doing. Definitely a gardening day.
Well, there were people watching football, you see, so we need to enthuse them with staying with us tonight. Carole, how are you feeling?
I'm fine. My husband's one of the ones going to be watching the football very shortly, for sure. So he's delighted I'm doing something else. Yeah, I'm from Yes Highlands, and just to remind you that it's Yes Highlands and Islands, because us islands are very proud to be part of it. And we also had a cracking day today, and we've been waiting to put the polythene on a tunnel, and we managed to do it today. So we're all feeling very, very happy and good form here today.
And you've also got a big pet family in the background there.
Yes, two Westies who wear their Yes cravats when they're out and about at the street stalls, which is a great pull, as you can imagine.
Now, I have a big debt to pay to you. You've helped us enormously. One of the challenges we have on the show is persuading women to appear. And you've helped us to boost our figures dramatically tonight. And I'm terribly, terribly grateful to you, because I don't know what it is. But let's talk about that. Why is it so difficult for women to come on the show? I mean, here you are, the two of you are on tonight. I know well in advance that it's going to be a great show. Why do we have difficulty? Why do women not come forward?
Alison said it earlier, because I asked Alison, how on earth are we on here tonight? What on earth? Why did we say yes? And Alison said...
I said, I'd heard what you said, John, that it's always men that come on, and where are the women? And I'm afraid that was the bait that got me. And here I am. I think, in a way, as you can see, I'm not in the first flush of youth. When we were at school, we weren't encouraged to talk out loud or discuss things, not in the way my grandchildren are these days. Right from the start, they're presenting opinions, essays, talking about things to the class. We didn't have that in school, and I think maybe that's a legacy.
Well, it's interesting you say that, really, Alison, because I mean, I'm very far from the first flush of youth. And I'm thinking back, I had the same school experience, I guess, that you both perhaps had, which was sit up, shut up, you're here to learn. What that meant in most cases, it's all changed now, happily, well, some of it has, was we want to produce somebody who can get a job at the end of the day. So education was about, you're here to learn in order that you can be qualified, and hopefully at the end of that qualification, you'll get a job and everyone in society will be well pleased. It was a shock to me to go to university and find out that not everyone believed that. And not just the Norwegians who were drunk every Constitution Day, but also people generally didn't take that view. So, and for me, that school experience was over 50 years ago, frankly. So the fact that it still has an impact tells you something about the culture, perhaps. Would you agree, Carole?
Absolutely. Brought up to be seen and not heard, for sure. Just very difficult. I still get very nervous expressing a view where it's people that I don't know. I don't know who's, there's lots of people watching tonight, and it just sets a panic off. But once you get going, it's fine. But I suppose I don't know. Quite often in the workplace, there's a cracking cartoon of sort of a boardroom, and there's one woman sitting there, and one of the men says, "That's a great idea, Mrs. Cleethorpe." I can't remember what the name is. Let's wait till one of the men suggests it. And I have to say, most women have that experience in their working life. They come up with ideas and they suggest them, and 3 weeks later it's discussed again as if it's a brand new idea and it's taken on board, and it is quite deflating a lot of the time. So you either have to become a rebel or you just have to give in to it. So Alison and I hopefully are rebels.
Well, good. I'm pleased to hear that.
One of the things that helped me was in midlife, I changed career and I became a medical herbalist. And I graduated a 4-year course, and nobody up here had ever heard of herbal medicine. I hadn't myself many years before. So I had to go out and present shows telling them about herbal medicine. And what I did was I used to take lots of slides, lots of pictures, lots of photographs, and project them and stand behind them in the dark telling them. And gradually I got more confident about doing that.
That's good. It just so happens my wife wrote a book on presenting for women in business. And she would always tell me, the important thing here is what she called full frontals. In other words, if you have an audience out there, you need to stand in front of them. They have to see you in your entirety. Don't stand behind the podium, go out there, and it's disarming to the audience. I mean, it's an extraordinary thing. I mean, we're social animals, and for some reason, there's something inside here that clicks if the person standing in front of you is not obscured in any way, shape, or form from the audience. It takes a lot of guts to do it, but it somehow establishes a bond in an unspoken way. It's the strangest thing ever. I've tried it and it works. I mean, it's astonishing because you feel so vulnerable, because all of us like them. I used to love to have a podium, and I would rest my notes on the podium, and that made me feel secure because there was something between me and the audience. But then I discovered once I got rid of the podium, people laughed at the jokes, they listened more intently, they asked more intelligent questions, and it was simply because they were in the zone with me. because I was part of them, as it were. Strange thing. I never able to quite understand it fully. So
It works.
it works, yeah. And I think people watching and listening tonight will feel the same. Why don't we get into the questions if we can? We've got one that's just come in, and it's the question. It's about the Scottish government, not the SNP perhaps, but the Scottish government has allocated, as you might know, £20 million or so for the referendum. And the question is, how would Yes groups, the Yes movement, work smart to make the most of the time period between now and September 2023? Why don't you kick off, Alison? How would you answer that question?
Well, I would say that actually the Yes groups have been working all through since 2014. We have stalls in the high street. We used to have them regularly until COVID, once a month. We would go out leafleting. We would have speakers coming, and that's, it was difficult for us to raise money. So if that money is coming to our Yes groups or to some of the Yes groups, is the 20 million, though, is it just going to the SNP? I would really like to see the SNP working with the wider Yes movement.
I think I'm not in a position to answer that, honestly, Alison, but I think since the money was assigned in the Scottish government budget, it would be very difficult for one party to lay claim to all of it, because apart from anything else, this is a joint government. It's SNP Green, and I would imagine if the SNP grabbed a chunk of it, the Greens would have something to say about it. So I assume the budget will be approved by the entire Parliament. So it will become an allocation which the Parliament has agreed the Scottish government should spend, and that will mean that it will have to be in some way or form. It will have to adhere to the official rules, whatever those may be. I have no idea, because we don't know what shape the referendum is going to take place. Carole, is there anything you would like to add to what Alison has just said about the fact that Yes groups have been working conscientiously since 2014?
Yes, I mean, I can't speak for other areas, but, certainly in the Yes Highlands and Islands, I think we are ready. We've got lots of material sitting, some of it sort of historic from the Believe in Scotland action days that with COVID, although we had some events, we didn't actually manage to deliver all that many of them. And that also then leads you to having conversations on the doorsteps with people. And I think that's going to be very crucial. I think most of us do have some funds, but we all need to booster them over the summer months. And for us in Skye House, that certainly doesn't necessarily mean talking to locals. Again, that needs to go around the doors. But what we do make is a lot of, we get to we have donations for a lot of merchandise from visitors, and that really, really helps in them. But I think, I think we're all feeling in a position. I know I Fine had a big street stall event. I know that I think Inverness has had a couple of bridges for Indie Day. So I think we're definitely gearing up. And the thing is, we're ready to move tomorrow. We just need the starting gun and a bit more information about how that 20 million is going to be spread around.
Well, that's absolutely fascinating. A big thank you to Laura Cameron for that question. We've had a question from Charles Smith. He's saying, did anything specific convert? And if you could, Alison, if you could answer this question first, please. Was there anything specific that converted you to the Yes movement? Was there anything that happened in your life, or was there any sort of motivator that took you in this direction?
Well, I think I've always been for independence in all sorts of things. I was involved in a project in the Highlands on women's suffrage, and that was absolutely fascinating because we didn't know what the what it was like in the Highlands. We have all sorts of information about Dundee and Glasgow and Edinburgh, and we discovered that there was an enormous amount of activity pushing for women's suffrage in the early 20th century. And I remember thinking, oh, I'd love to have been around at that time to be doing this. And also, I have a husband who has been involved in the independence campaign for years and years and years. And I should think that affected me as well. But yes, I've always voted yes for an independent country. It makes sense. You want to run your own affairs.
Certainly makes sense to me. Carole, what about you?
Well, at the age of 13, I was very interested in independence because when Winnie Ewing won the 1967 Hamilton by-election, I lived in Glasgow at the time. To me, this was just something that was just amazing because I'd read a lot of, been brought up with stories of Wallace and Bruce and all that. I was brought up, you know, with quite a lot of Scottish history in my life. I also then had a slightly older friend who took me out canvassing for George Leslie, who didn't win his seat, but after that then I joined the SNP as soon as I could. And so I've always been quite political. I got 3 criminal charges for the Skye Bridge, of which I'm actually very proud. They didn't go all the way, so I got let off, but that's by the by. I was a bit annoyed about that actually, but hey ho. And then I helped when the campaign started in 2012. I had worked with Ian Blackford quite a lot at that time, so we did lots and lots of road shows around Skye and Lahalsh, and I helped set up Yes Skye and Lahalsh, became the coordinator in 2012, and I've been it ever since. And we had a Yestival Skye, which had lots of musicians along at it in 2016, and that was about the time when Alison invited us along to the Inver Yes Hub for their first Yes Highlands meeting, of which I think there was 14 groups at that time, Alison. So the rest is history after that.
Yes, there were certainly over 30 folk turned up. And it was in Spectrum. We didn't have the hub at that time.
That's right.
It was in Spectrum. And that's when things took off, really. We had said, would you, if you want to form this group, it was just Yes Highland, we can move around to various areas for meetings, face-to-face meetings. And in the end, we took a vote and everybody wanted to have them in Inverness because it was actually easier to get to Inverness than anywhere else. So they've been in Inverness ever since. And then we inherited a hub, which was absolutely great. So we didn't need to pay anybody for our meetings. And that worked out very well.
That's good. I want to ask you a question about the effect of age on people's views on independence. But before I do that, let me ask you a question about gender. What is your feeling about the gender split in terms of independence? There was a time, not so very long ago, though polling suggests that things have changed, where independence was more of there were more male supporters than female supporters. What's your sense of it now? Is it 50-50, would you say? Is there still more men supportive of independence? We're talking about the Yes Highland area now. What would you say?
I think we're pretty mixed on our representatives, Alison. I sometimes do a quick count and it's pretty 50-50. On the more general question, I think the couple of surveys I've seen is that the women vote has increased and the male vote has gone down a bit. And I think it's because women talk to each other. You know, I think, you know, so they've maybe expressed, I don't know, they've probably watched Boris Johnson and said maybe independence is a good idea, and they've started asking people. And younger women, of course, obviously, most young people are very pro anyway. But I think it might be a bit of that. I'm not sure. I think a lot. Oh, sorry.
Yes, I'm not sure about the gender thing at all, but certainly the age thing, we get a bit narked about the age thing because we are run by aged people. And we're the ones that have kept it going.
But I think
let's talk about age.
Could I just add in a wee bit there, please, though, because I think that there's always a push on for, we need to get young people, we need to get young people involved. Well, they are involved. They're just involved differently. They're involved in social media and in the pub and whatever. And I don't think we need to worry about them. It's back to what you're saying. The people we need to worry about are people of our generation, and we're the best people to go and talk to them.
I think I would agree with that. My sense of it, for what it's worth, and maybe not a great deal, frankly, because it's mostly sort of not terribly objective and very subjective, is your point that young people get their information through social media. They don't necessarily consume material from newspapers or, for that matter, television or radio. They have friends, they have, either whatever social media they use. My grandson was telling me that I should stay off TikTok because of my more vulnerable disposition, I suspect. But he uses it all the time, and so he's always in touch with all of his friends, wherever they are. And if I ask him what was your paper, the last newspaper you read, I expect I'll get a blank response.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. Why would I read a newspaper? I get all the information I need elsewhere. Of course, the opposite applies when you're talking about older people, because then these are the folks who do consume newspapers.
I think you can see that in the national. The national letters, I would reckon the average age is certainly over 60.
Yeah.
And I'm an example because I'm not on Facebook, I'm not on TikTok or Twitter, but I read the paper.
I'll come to my grandson. You're well off not being on TikTok.
Yeah.
But no, the serious point though is that, okay, if you look at the polling figures, and I've no reason to question these, you're talking roughly 20 odd and younger. The support for independence is around about 75%. Once you hit 60, that is completely reversed, and you're talking about well over 70% opposed to independence. Why do you think that is?
I think people are just worried about they're worried about their pension, and I think there's stories of MPs and parties phoning up people and telling them they won't get their pension in independent Scotland. I mean, that's actually quite shocking because you think it's just hearsay, but it sounds as though it's, people actually know for sure that happened. But certainly in the last referendum, there was a couple of elderly ladies that I used to drop in on. And over the months, they both said that they would vote yes. And the clincher for them actually was, but you're not really voting for you, you're voting for your grandchildren. And they said, yeah, no, because they had said, our grandchildren want yes, and one of our daughters does and the other doesn't. And it gave me the opportunity to say, yeah, but, let's face it, none of us are getting any younger, but it's the future for our grandchildren. And I think that's a good message that we need to try and get across going forward, because Brexit happened through people's emotions. It didn't really happen through facts and figures. If you'd listened to the facts and figures, it would have been 100% no. Yeah.
I'm very interested that you say that, Carole. I'll tell you why. Because I saw some research recently, and it strongly suggested that an emotional commitment is what greatly influences people's voting intentions. In other words, we dress things up around facts, And I often hear people say, and I'm sure you do too, Alison and Carole, you hear people say, we have to give people the facts. Otherwise, we'll never be able to change minds. But the reality is, at the end of the day, it seems to be emotions. It seems to be you're going to lose something if you do this. And I know they called it in 2014 Project Fear, but that wasn't accidental. They did the research, and the research clearly showed that if you press the fear button, you'll get a better result than if you press the hope button. And my sense of it was that at that time, the Yes campaign led with hope. And I remember sitting with the campaign director of the Yes campaign and asking him directly the question, what do you have to balance out your hope message? Because right now, people are listening to fear after fear after fear. What's your fear point? And he said, we're not going to do that. And it seemed to me that's a bit like, fighting a boxing match with only one arm. You limit yourself. I may be wrong, but that's my sense of it.
Yeah, I've been saying for a long time that what we need is this vision of what it's going to be like, and a positive vision. Whether we're getting that across, I'm not sure.
What would a positive vision be for you, Alison?
I suppose making my own decisions and looking after the poorer folk so that they can enjoy life more.
So would your positive vision be based upon values?
Yeah, I suppose it would.
Okay.
I think I agree. Yeah, I agree with Alison, and it also, that it's the old one of, do you want your children to grow up and be independent? Of course you do. Why wouldn't you? But it also is, I just feel that, I remember the day after the referendum, I just said Scotland is going to be asset stripped, and that there's plenty of times that's what it feels like. And we're now back to the stage of, Scotland's oil revenues are being used to offset, a lot of the Tory downside policies.
Yeah.
And, once again, the national grid, the very fact that we have to pay to export our electricity down south, which is absolutely outrageous when we're producing so much. The very fact that, there's no more subsidies for wind turbines, for example, because down south, again, because there's a denser population, they don't want it in my backyard. But here, there's lots and lots of land. There was actually lots of small community schemes, but what's actually happened now that there's a shortage of parts, there's a shortage of engineers to fix them, to maintain them.
Yeah. Because,
it's costing so much for new projects to go ahead. So it's just, so it's social and financial economic reasons for me.
Yeah, you said earlier that people tended to take an emotional approach. In other words, by all means, give me the facts and figures, but at the end of the day, emotions will determine how I intend to vote.
Yeah. Well, the two other things that I used a lot, and again, is the one that's, you show them the picture and say, there's 73, I think it was at the time, MPs in London greater area alone, and we have 59. How can Scotland ever vote and get what we want? And the other one that what was Jenkins used was the if Scotland was already an independent country, would you vote to be, So again, they're emotional things, and they're the ones that make people stop and they have to think. Whereas if you do facts and figures, they go, no, that's not right.
Yeah, I think I mean, there's everything to be said for facts and figures. It's terribly important. And we shouldn't be aiming towards a society where we deplore people who are expert, because we shouldn't. What sort of country would we be creating if we went down that route? So we have to play fair, even though the other side may not.
Oh, yeah.
It's in our interest, it seems to me. And let me just add, by the way,
going back to your question about speaking to older people, because they're the ones that make them have to think instead of just a gut reaction to no to independence.
Yeah, I want to come back and talk about older people in a second, if I may. Just to remind everyone who may be listening and not watching, there's a poll running just now. Should Scotland be an independent country? And if you are watching, you'll see the sticker at the foot of the page. It's up now. It's on Facebook, it's on YouTube and the Twitter streams. And we're asking, please, give us your view. Should Scotland be an independent country? And we may run this every week, by the way, until we get the answer we're looking for. Like the press. But no, seriously, I wanted, because it seems to me that if you've got 75% or more, perhaps, in certain age groups, then it doesn't make sense to go and try and talk to the people who are already committed. It makes sense to go and talk to the people who are not committed, and to find out what it is their problem is, if you can describe it, their concern or their issue is, or the reservation is, and then try and address that reservation, rather than work on the folks who already made up their minds that they're supportive of independence. As you talk to people who are not in favour of independence, what is their commonest sense, would you say, Alison, about why they feel resistant to the whole notion?
I think because they've been, particularly my generation and maybe a bit younger, have been in Britain all their lives, and they maybe have forgotten their history, that Scotland was independent. Scotland was an independent country. It wasn't just a region of Britain. For a while, it certainly worked okay. It was all right, and then it's completely gone off the rails recently.
So let's imagine for a second that imagine I'm a woman, same age as you, and we've just met, and I say to you, well, this is all very well and good for you, Alison. You've always been a supporter, or certainly for a long time. But I'm worried about the fact that we're splitting families up. We're creating a border where none exists just now. Look what happens when you create borders. You just create huge difficulties. What would you say to me?
I think the thing about splitting families up and borders is daft, really. You may see this map on my wall of New Zealand. One of our sons is in New Zealand, and we've had no problem keeping in touch with him and him with us, from going out to see him, and they come here. And now, of course, with all the internet, it's even easier. And
yes, my answer to that would be, well, hold on a second, Alison. New Zealand is 10,000 miles away. Berwick is only, for some people in Scotland, is only 5 miles away, less than that. And you want to stick a border up there. This is not New Zealand. This is our family and friends.
Yeah, but you're not going to not go over the border. You're still going to keep in touch. I mean, think of all the European countries that are next to one another, and they don't have a problem.
Well, some of these countries went through a very difficult phase indeed before they established where they are just now. There was only one velvet divorce that I can recall, and that was the Czech Republic and Slovakia. All the rest of it was pretty messy stuff. We had world wars, we had all sorts of stuff going on there.
Well,
maybe there's an opportunity for Scotland. We just go straight from Ireland, and all the trade comes through Scotland to Europe, and we all score from it. I mean, obviously Ireland have very difficult history, but the border, you just sail between Northern Ireland and Ireland, And if you go on holiday, what I used to say to my mum, who'd been in her early 90s now, she was a Tory. She was an absolute against independence. She hated Nicola Sturgeon with a vengeance. Uh, all these things. So we used to have a good few chats over dinner when I went down to see her. But, one of the things was that border thing. And I said, but you go on holiday, you go abroad, you get your euros, off you go. And she went, oh, yeah, I never thought of that. So sometimes, it's just taking it back to the basics for people and just making them think about how they actually live their lives now.
It seems to me that's what's terribly, terribly important here is if somebody takes an emotional position, I've always found when I'm dealing with people who take something emotionally, but if you have a discussion and it's about facts, then that's one thing. I'm a businessman, I'm used to that. It's a very different proposition when you're dealing with people who have an emotional attachment to things. I mean, take the Jubilee that's happening just now. I saw a picture tonight of a row of cottages somewhere in Fife, and it was barren, apart from one group of Union flags over this one house in a whole row, and it was a woman of 95, and she's giving people a message, and it seemed to me part of that message was, I want to stay with this. It's important to me. I don't think it's daft. I think it's important to me, and I want you folks to hear me when I say it's important to me, and suggest to me on that heart-to-heart, not head-to-head, heart-to-heart basis, how I'm not going to be at a loss because of that. What would you say to somebody who took that view?
Well, it's quite hard because I think in an independent Scotland there would almost certainly be a vote about should we retain the monarchy. And so I don't suppose we can give any answers. I suspect the answer would be no, but I don't know that. So I'm not sure how that would reassure the person. I think you just have to move it on to other areas. You can't resolve every concern people have.
Yeah, I think that's true. Alison,
maybe
any thoughts on that? How you would speak to this nice lady?
Yeah, it's difficult, I think, for some people who are really what I call dyed in the wool, and you're not going to change them. I think it's a fear thing, and also as far as things like the Jubilee are concerned, we've been brought up to look up to the royal family. It's only fairly recently that things have fallen apart a bit. If you think the BBC have pushed it for years and years and years, and it is difficult for folk to change how they feel about that. They also feel in a personal sense with the Queen, I think. Think of her as a person, which of course she is, but they just feel safe where they are.
It seems to me you just made a very, very good point indeed. It seems to me a lot of this is about people feeling safe. Anytime you talk to people about change, there's always a group of folks, whether it be in a room or you're over at dinner or whatever, who will say, I hear what you're talking about. I don't want any change. I've got enough change in my life. I don't want any more. I've gone through enough difficulties and trials and tribulations. What you're suggesting sounds like more of that to me, and I don't want any part of it. But, and I think it's an important but, you don't need to change the 75% to zero. I suspect all you need to do is bring the 75% down to 50%. and you've won the referendum, because the rest of the bulk is made up of people who have always been supportive of independence. So maybe the key is targeting and saying, look, there's some folks who are never going to change their mind. It's not going to happen. And that's a fact, perhaps. But there's maybe 25% in there who would be responsive to the right sort of discussion. And I suspect it will be done on the basis that you and Carole suggested, which is face-to-face.
It has to be.
I suspect that's powerful. More so than people who use social media the whole time, who don't care too much. I think once you reach a certain age, your face-to-face is much more important than it is for people who are younger, perhaps.
I think one of the problems is with people that just won't engage.
Yeah.
And you always feel that, in fact, they're worried that you might persuade them, but they don't want to be persuaded. I mean, in a way, it's maybe like religious people coming to your door. You know what you think. You just don't want to engage, no, thank you. And there's quite a lot that do that. And it's very frustrating. I have sisters that won't engage.
What do they think of you?
I think they think I've been influenced by my husband.
Are they saying that they're not influenced by their husbands? Is that? But I think it is. I think my own sense of it, for what it's worth, again, is the face-to-face is going to be terribly important. I think it's also going to be terribly, terribly important to be able to describe what this new state, this new country will look like to the greatest degree possible. And I mean, one of the reasons I'm so enthusiastic about a Scottish constitution is because it's a contract between the state and the citizens that says this is what we stand for and this is what we will not stand for. Mm-hmm. So, for example, we stand for human rights. We will not stand for people being prejudiced in any way. We will stand up, to be very clear what the contract is. Because right now the contract in the UK is so messy, it's almost impossible to figure out what the UK government stands for. I don't know right now. I don't know if they're for immigration or against immigration. I don't know any of these things because they say one thing and they do a different thing. I know that's calculated. They want to damn all politicians with the same thoughts, but I suspect that will not work. Do you think it would make, sticking to the monarchy just for a second longer, if we may, do you think it would make any difference to these people, as and when the Queen is not around? Because that's bound to be the case at some point in history. What do you think, Carole? Would it make any difference?
It might do. It might do. I think there are people more questioning of the money that, and the wealth that the monarchy owns. So it could be a factor with some people, but older people that are very, my mum was just so, the Queen, gave her whole life to what she just gave her life and she had no choice in the matter. But, my mum got married the year the Queen got married. So, and they just come through the war and the monarchy was very important to them in those days. But, that's a generation that is pretty well, sadly, not many of them going to be here for the referendum. We're talking 15 years ago, perhaps. So I don't know if we're going to find that as much of an issue on the doorsteps as it was perhaps before.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think believe it.
Sorry,
what do you think, Alison?
I think the timing, which in fact, obviously, we can't do anything about, will be crucial. Again, I feel that certain members of the royal family have had a bad press. I mean, one of the things is that the press is all mainly right wing, and for the monarchy.
Yeah. Well, I think you would expect that. I mean, the media tends to be, by and large, in favour of the status quo, but with a few tweaks. I mean, I expect that's why Starmer for Labour has to keep a very middle of the road approach, because he doesn't want to frighten the horses in the southeast by suggesting anything sort of progressive or left wing, which means that he would find it very difficult to deal with the SNP, for example. But the likelihood is that if the next election happens within the next 12 months, then you'll have to cut a deal with somebody, because of the first past the post system militates against, unless the Tories will put up a formidable campaign. And when I speak to people on the centre right, they say, well, we'd be quite happy to lose and let Labour pick up the tab for all the mess that we made of Brexit. And then they'll fail within a year and we'll get back in again. Sounds very cynical. Maybe it's not accurate, but it's a viewpoint. If you were part of the Yes campaign right now, and you were looking at reaching out to voters of our age, what are the main messages that you would like to be delivered to these folks? Why don't you kick off, Carole?
Whoa, it's a difficult one. I'm just not sure yet. I just like to approach things from a different angle and throw questions at people, open questions that mean they have to think. So I think I could give them all the facts about pensions. We've got the leaflets, some good leaflets from Gordon McIntyre kept from Believe in Scotland. I would certainly make sure I had them with them. I would take along the Independence in Your Pocket booklet. I would take the Wee Alba book. What else? There's the Scotland the Brief as well. So if people had asked a question about pensions, I would say, here, have this wee book and read it at your own leisure. And if you want to ask me anything, I might not know the answer, but give us a shout anyway, and I'll see if I can see what I can do, and I'll come back and have a cup of tea with you.
I think just let's have a cup of tea and talk about it. I think that's
talking is the thing, really, to get people to talk. When they don't talk, that's the problem.
Yeah.
So what sort of vehicles would there be to have these conversations?
Well, I think it's doorstep.
Mm-hmm. Yes, although not everybody likes being doorstep, do they?
No.
Or doing it. A lot of our members aren't all that keen to doorstep. We'll deliver leaflets, but actually knocking folk up.
That's true.
And that's partly because every now and again you get a really difficult one.
Yeah.
And that scares some folk. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I can understand that. I mean, I was once chased down the road in Kinross by an irate woman.
Yeah, I've had that as well. Yep.
Since we were talking about women who didn't want to push themselves forward, this lady certainly pushed her way forward. In fact, if she got a hold of me, she would have clobbered me with a leaflet, I suspect.
Well, we do stalls. We've always done stalls, and
I think that's good.
It's been difficult recently, partly, well, obviously because of COVID, but even in the centre of Inverness on the day that there's a farmers market, there still isn't the numbers, aren't the numbers there.
Yeah. And
very often we're getting foreigners coming up to us asking us about it, which is fine, but you really want the folk that walk past you turning the other way.
Yeah, we actually had a street stall at the referendum, and we had a neighbour helping me, and her brother came out the shop and crossed the road so he didn't need the embarrassment of speaking to his sister, who was 70 at the time. That been seen at a Yes stall.
Yeah, that's very Scottish, I have to tell you. In Scotland, everything is regarded as a bit of a problem within the family. Come on, you're embarrassing us now. Put that away. And you just have to get beyond that, because in other cultures, people have a problem.
Yeah, she's managed to persuade her other brother to vote yes, so that's good.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. Now, you wanted to talk about what? The manifesto?
Oh, well, yeah, we were just, like some of the events we run, so we meet once a month, and there's always someone got something happening. And this time it's Yes Ross Sutherland and Yes Caithness are holding a festival on an alternative to the Jubilee on the 3rd and 5th of June, if you're not wanting to be glued to the television all weekend. And the forecast is good, so why would you? Nothing to do with anything else for a start. So they've got music in the evening in Golspie, and then the next day is brilliant. We've got Leslie Riddick, who's going to be hosting. We've got Alf Baird, Alec Ross, who writes for Orkney News, Ian Lawson, Delina McLennan, who was in the Chivy at the Stag and the Black Oil.
Okay.
Sir Alapa, pipes and drums, the Yes Bikers, and Graham Brown Band. Just lots going on. Barracuda, George Gunn, and Eddie Harper, Paul Colvin. I'm just running out. But as you can see the events there. Sorry, I was too busy reading to notice it. Yeah.
It sounds better when you tell us.
So I don't know if you know about the Manny that sits above Golspie, which is the Duke of Sutherland statue. There's been, there's a big debate about whether he should come down or whether he should be left there with a different plaque to remind people of his deeds, his not nice deeds, and the integral part he played in the clearances. So it's got historic meaning for us all in the Highlands and Islands, not just in Sutherland. Obviously Skye and the whole of the Highlands was pretty devastated by landlords at that time, clearing the land for people.
Just to underscore what you said, it starts on Friday the 3rd.
Yeah.
At the McGregor's at the Ben in Golspie. The next day, on Saturday the 4th, you've got Leslie Riddock, Alf Baird. I won't go through everyone. I hope they'll forgive me.
Yeah. There's going to be
and that'll
stage
be
and then lots of music at night.
In Golspie. Then the Sunday there'll be music in McGregor's at the Ben, again in Golspie. So all of this is happening over the weekend.
And you'll find the information on the Yes Highlands and Islands Facebook page and their Twitter account.
Good.
So if you're wanting anything.
Just
that's it. So thank you for that. But it's kind of going to kick off.
Plug. Delighted, absolutely delighted.
It's kind of the kick-off to our campaign again in the Highlands and Islands. It's kind of this, it's a great opening for us all to get going again.
Yeah, it's great. It's like post-COVID. You're starting to get the gang together again. It's a message of hope. It's a message of fun. It's a message of entertainment. There's no reason why politics should be dull. The people who want it to be dull are the people who want you not to vote at all, frankly, seems to me.
And I think Leslie's is editing the National for a supplement for the middle of on that weekend as well.
Cool.
Which is a kind of wider look at the Highlands and Islands. So that's quite interesting as well.
Well, I hope she'll mention that we gave him a plug tonight.
Absolutely. I think what someone's attending from Indie Live.
Sorry?
I think we're thinking someone from Indie Live will be there as well. So that's great. So thank you very much for that.
Excellent. No, you're very welcome. Alison, is there anything you want to plug before we go?
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to go there. My husband has just had a hip replacement, and he's hobbling around in crutches, so I don't like to go away for too long.
Yeah.
But yes, I think it'll be a great weekend. Yeah.
It looks fantastic, and you'll let us know, Alison, if anything is happening in Inverness, huh?
What, this weekend?
No, not this weekend, but just generally. Let
Anytime.
Kevin know,
Yeah.
and we'll promote it. I don't want you to go away thinking, gracious, the Manifest got this big plug and then we're doing something in for them.
No, but this is all Yes Highlands and Islands. We're all one.
Exactly.
We don't bother about that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
Yes.
that's terrific. Now,
It's just the location is Goldsby.
We've only got a few minutes left. By the way, Kevin's reminding me that there'll be 3 live streamers at the event. So that's hugely important, because what that means is that people who can't get there can enjoy what you're enjoying remotely. And we talked about, this whole business of interconnections, network using. I mean, if you think about it, Kevin is doing all of this on a shoestring. Mm-hmm. And the BBC, which has a budget of 300 million for Scotland, will have no one there. Mm-hmm. No one. I can guarantee it. It will not feature anywhere. It will not be listed. There'll be nothing. Zip, zero. And they say they're providing a service to the community. Clearly not. Because what you're doing is, frankly, I mean, it ticks all the boxes for me. You didn't get this huge sponsorship. You didn't. I mean, for example, somebody's just reminded us that the amount of money reserved for the referendum is less than the amount of money that's being spent at the Jubilee.
Yep.
Yeah. They're spending 22 million on the Jubilee, which is more than is being assigned to the referendum. Like I said, we've only got a few more minutes to go. I should have warned you that the hour goes fast. It just disappears before we get to. Are there any last messages that each of you would like to give to those who are watching and listening tonight about Yes Highlands and Islands, or about your own position, or something you feel strongly about? Why don't you kick off, Alison, and then?
I would just like to say that we are very anxious that people get engaged again with the Yes campaign. There's been a dip, certainly, and we need folk to get engaged. And with Yes Highlands and Islands, it's been great meeting so many different people, and we also get ideas from different groups. At each meeting, we ask what the groups have been doing the last month, and it's wonderful to hear what other folk are doing, and they hear what we've been doing. So, please get in touch.
How do they get in touch?
We have a website too, a Facebook page.
It's on the screen now.
Yeah, they can get in. And yes, and Yes also have a Facebook page as well.
Cool. So people want to help you, want to get involved. There's an easy, straightforward way to get in touch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Excellent. Super.
And I think through that contact, through our Twitter account, when we set up our new Twitter account, because of the Manifest thing, we got in touch with Shetland, because someone asked why Shetland wasn't on the map. And they didn't have a kind of formed enough group from, a couple of years back. But we think they're coming to our next meeting. And also we have another gap down, we didn't know, Yes Carole, and they've been in touch with us as well. So hopefully by our next meeting, we will completely have the Highlands covered in blue. Highlands and Islands. I'm going back to making the same mistake, and I'm on an island.
Well, that's great. That's super. Thank you to both of you, for giving up your time, and also for enlightening us and educating us about what Yes Highlands is all about, because that's what the show's about. We intend to inform, educate, and entertain. So that's fantastic. Thank you to both of you. Really appreciate it. Let's all keep in touch, because you're doing some great stuff up there, and I applaud. And I'll be with you in spirit over the weekend, even if I can't be there in body. So good luck to you both. And thank you again for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
I'm just going to say a few concluding remarks if you want to stick around for a little bit. A big thank you to Alison and Carole, and a big thanks to all of you out there for joining us tonight. I hope you've enjoyed the show. As ever, we've got some great guests lined up for future shows. Next week, we'll be back at the same time, when we'll be talking to Olaf Stando, who is the SNP's digital media officer. So we've been talking earlier tonight about the internet and how it's so important. You've got a chance to put some questions to Olaf when he appears next week. Do look out, please, for Elliot Wilmer's column in the Sunday National at the weekend. It'll be in the 7 Days supplement. And also, please, don't forget there's a new show coming up on June the 23rd from Europe for Scotland. You really don't want to miss that. So, to all of you, thanks for joining us. Stay safe and take care. And there may well be a Scotonomics show coming on right after this, on this channel, right after us. If that is the case, don't miss it. These shows are always great shows. They're hugely informative as well as being entertaining. So to all of you, take care, stay safe, and I'll see you all next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Good night, all.